You know all the big, messy problems we argue about every single day? Things like wage stagnation, the insane political polarization, even climate change? What if they're not actually separate issues at all? What if they're all just symptoms, all flowing from one single underlying architecture? A kind of hidden mechanism that's shaping our entire world.
I mean, we all know the standard political script, right? If you listen to the left, the big bad villain is concentrated corporate power. But if you listen to the right, it's all about government overreach and out-of-control spending. And yeah, those two stories pretty much dominate our entire news cycle.
But here's the thought. What if both sides are kind of right, just only partially? What if they're not talking about two different problems, but are actually just describing different faces of the very same machine? A machine that's humming away just beneath the surface of our daily politics.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this machine's blueprint, we actually need to rewind the clock. We need to look back at a warning from the past, and it comes from a very surprising source, Adam Smith.
See, when Adam Smith went after the East India Company, most people think he was critiquing business or free markets. But that's not it at all. He was warning about something totally new back then, a legal structure, the corporation. And he was flagging the unique and, in his view, really dangerous powers it was being given.
And this playbook that it established is really fascinating. Let's break it down. Step 1, concentrate a ton of capital by using this brand new legal shield called limited liability. Step 2, use that massive size to go out and capture monopoly privileges from the state. And then step 3, and this is absolutely the crucial part, when your huge, risky bets fail, you just get the government to socialize the losses. So think about that. The upside is all private, but the downside? Yeah, that becomes everyone's problem.
So that historical blueprint didn't just disappear. It evolved. And today, it's become a modern machine with 3 core components that we need to understand. So here they are. First, you've got the corporation, which is basically a legal tool for pulling together vast amounts of capital. Second, you have the credit system, and we're talking specifically about fractional reserve banking, where banks can lend out way more money than they actually have in their vaults. This is what finances that concentration of capital on a massive scale. But, and this is a big but, this system is inherently unstable. It's prone to crises, and that leads directly to step 3, the central bank, which was basically created to act as a backstop, to save the credit system from its own inevitable meltdowns. You see how each piece sort of necessitates the next?
All right, so that's the abstract architecture, the blueprint. But now let's connect the dots. Let's see how this one single machine actually creates so many of the different, seemingly disconnected problems we're all facing today.
Let's start with a really big one that I'm sure a lot of you have felt personally. Why is it that wages have been basically flat for decades, even while worker productivity has just gone through the roof? Well, the machine, it gives us a pretty clear answer.
The key to understanding this is something called the Cantillon Effect. Here's how it works. When new money is created, by the central bank and the credit system, it doesn't just spread out evenly like rain. It's more like a fire hose. It goes first to those who are closest to the source. We're talking banks, large corporations. And they get to spend that new money before prices have had a chance to rise. By the time that money finally filters down to the rest of us in the form of wages, prices have already gone up. And that's the whole game, right there. Your paycheck can never quite catch up.
Or how about this one? Why do we constantly see these stories about private equity firms buying up perfectly healthy companies, loading them down with a mountain of debt, and then often just driving them straight into the ground, all while the PE guys walk away with millions? It seems crazy, right?
Well, it's because the entire private equity model is a creature of this machine. It completely depends on the constant availability of cheap debt that the system creates, and it uses the corporation's limited liability shield to protect itself from any of the bad consequences. So you have to understand, this isn't a bug in the system. It's a business model that could only exist in this very specific monetary environment. And look, it's not just about finance. Think about our online world for a second. Why does it feel so angry, so polarized all the time? Well, it turns out the machine's logic extends right into our social media feeds.
It's simple, really. Tech platforms are these massive corporations that need to show endless growth. The credit system rewards that growth with insane, sky-high valuations. So the question becomes, how do you get that growth? You maximize engagement. And what have they figured out? Well, it turns out that anger and division are absolutely fantastic for engagement. So the very architecture of the system incentivizes these companies to fragment society, to keep us all fighting with each other instead of maybe, just maybe, looking at the system itself.
Now, here's where it gets really remarkable. When you have two completely opposite political tribes look at a key part of this machine, they actually come to the exact same diagnosis.
Check this out. On the left, you have a socialist writer, like Grace Blakely. She argues that central banks are completely captured by the financial sector. Her solution? Put them under democratic control. Okay, now look at the other side, the Bitcoin camp. They argue the exact same thing. Central banks are captured by finance. Their solution is totally different, though. They say let's replace them with an algorithm that can't be lobbied. Isn't that wild? They see the exact same problem because they are both looking at the same machine.
But the machine's impact doesn't stop at the social or economic level. It goes deeper. There's a biophysical dimension to all of this. It's literally pulling problems from the future and dropping them right into our present.
This is a really powerful insight from the biophysical economist Nate Higgins. He points out that every single dollar created through bank lending isn't just a number on a screen. It's not just a digital entry in a ledger. It is a claim on future energy and future materials. We're talking about resources that haven't even been pulled out of the ground yet.
And the result is, well, this. The financial claims we're creating, that's the really tall bar, are just growing exponentially faster than our ability to produce real stuff in the real world. That's the much shorter bar. This gap that's getting wider and wider, it's like a giant rubber band being stretched to its absolute limit. And that tension has to be released. It can either be released slowly, or it's going to snap back violently.
So, to put it simply, our monetary system is acting like an accelerator pedal that's just stuck to the floor. It is forcing the economy to burn through real-world resources way faster than the planet can possibly sustain. We are effectively borrowing our children's future just to fuel today's consumption. So when you finally put all of these pieces together, this three-part architecture starts to look like a kind of Rosetta Stone. It's the key that allows us to see how all of our biggest, scariest crises are actually deeply interconnected.
And this brings us back to the beginning. It means the left, the right, the libertarians, the Greens, they aren't necessarily wrong in their diagnoses. They are each correctly describing the damage that they see from their own unique vantage point. They're just looking at one single face of a much, much larger machine.
And that really is the key takeaway here. This isn't some secret conspiracy. It's not some vague ideology like neoliberalism. No, it is a specifiable architecture. It has a name, it has components, and it produces predictable, observable outcomes that affect everything from our bank accounts all the way up to our global ecosystems.
And because this architecture is so incredibly powerful, and because it produces all these outcomes so automatically, there is one single question that the entire machine is built to make sure that no one ever thinks to ask.